My name is Maren Whitfield, and for 29 years, I thought I knew exactly where I stood with my family. I thought I was the daughter who showed up, the one who could be counted on. Turns out, counted on and counted in are two very different things, and I only learned the difference by accident. Standing in my parents' kitchen in Asheville, North Carolina, holding a folder I was never supposed to open. Let me back up. For the last 6 years, I'd been the one keeping my parents' household running, not helping running. When their roof needed replacing after a bad storm in 2020, I covered the $11,000 difference their insurance wouldn't pay. When my dad's hours got cut at the plant, I quietly started covering their mortgage payment, $940 a month, like clockwork, straight from my checking account. When their car broke down, I bought them a used Honda so my mom could still get to her dialysis appointments on time. I did their taxes. I set up their bill pay. I drove 2 hours round trip most Sundays just to make sure the fridge was stocked and the porch light bulb was changed. Meanwhile, my younger brother Desmond did none of it. I don't say that out of spite. I say it because it's simply true. Desmond was 26 years old, living rent-free in our parents' finished basement, working on his music, which, after 4 years, had produced exactly one SoundCloud track with 200 plays, half of which were probably me. Checking in, hope that he'd finally made something of himself. He didn't pay for groceries. He didn't pay for utilities. When our mom asked him to at least mow the lawn, he'd disappear into his room for the rest of the day, sulking like a teenager instead of the grown man. I never resented him for struggling. Everybody struggles. What I resented, what I didn't even let myself call resentment until much later, was that nobody in my family seemed to notice the gap between what I gave and what he gave. It was just accepted. Maren handles it. That's what she does. So there I was, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in March, at my parents' house in the Kenilworth neighborhood, helping my dad scan some paperwork for a refinancing application because, as usual, neither of my parents could get the printer-scanner combo to cooperate. I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that. Because when I told this story to my best friend Priya later, that was her first question. Were you snooping? No. I was doing what I always did, fixing something they couldn't fix themselves. But sitting right there on top of the stack, in a plain manila folder, were the words estate planning, last will, and testament. I told myself I wouldn't look. I really did. But I'd spent 6 years being the person who made sure everything in that house was in order. And some part of me, maybe pride, maybe just a nagging itch, wanted to know that the plan for their future accounted for the person who'd spent her 20s bankrolling their present. So I opened it. I wish I hadn't. Everything. The house, the modest retirement account, even a small life insurance payout was left to Desmond. Not split evenly, not even mostly to him with a token gesture toward me. All of it. The only place my name appeared was in a single boilerplate sentence. We love both of our children equally and hope they will always support one another. Equally, I actually laughed out loud, alone in that kitchen. Because there is nothing equal about handing one child a house and a savings account while the other child is the reason there's still a house and a savings account to hand over. I sat there for what felt like a long time. Long enough that my dad, Warren, wandered back in and found me still holding the folder instead of the scanner. Everything okay? Mayor, he asked. I looked up at him. Is this real? I held up the will. Is this actually the plan? His face did that thing faces do when they've been caught a half second of panic before it smooths back over into practiced calm. Honey, it's not what you think. It's pretty clearly what I think. I said. My voice wasn't loud. If anything, it was unnervingly quiet. Even to me. I've been paying your mortgage for 2 years. Dad, I paid for the roof. I bought mom's car. And Desmond gets the house. It's complicated. He said 2 words. That was the entirety of his defense. Not an apology. Not an explanation. Just complicated. Like I was a customer service rep. He was trying to get off the phone. I called for my mother, Lauren. When she came in and saw what I was holding, she at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, but what came out of her mouth made something in my chest go cold. Sweetheart, you don't need it. She said, gently, like she was doing me a kindness. You have a good job. You're stable. Desmond doesn't have anything. We just want to make sure he's taken care of. That was the moment I understood this wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a will they hadn't gotten around to updating. This was a decision made deliberately and made because in their eyes, my competence was a punishment. And Desmond's failure to launch was a form of currency he could cash in for a house. I set the folder down on the counter. Got it. I said, good to know where I stand. Then I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry in the driveway. I just drove home to my apartment in West Asheville and sat on my couch in silence for a long time, replaying 6 years of Venmo transfers and grocery runs and Sunday drives. All of it suddenly recontextualized as something closer to exploitation than love. I didn't call them for 2 weeks. I didn't send the mortgage payment. I didn't check in. For the first time since I was 23 years old, I let my parents' problems be their parents' problems. The silence didn't last. On day 15, I got a text from my dad times property tax bill came. Due end of month. No, how are you? No, we've been thinking about what happened. Just an invoice? Like I was still on payroll and he was reminding me about deductions. I stared at that text for a full minute before I typed back times. I'm sure Desmond can handle it, since the house is his now. My phone rang within 5 minutes. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text from my mom times Marin. Please don't be like this. We need to talk. I waited an hour before responding times. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now live with it. I thought that would be the end of it for the day. It wasn't. That evening, Desmond texted me for the first time in months times, why are you being so dramatic? Just help them out like you always do. I almost laughed at my phone. Not a big deal. He called it, funny how it stopped being about principle real fast when the money stopped flowing toward him. No. I wrote back, I think you've got this covered. You're the one who's inheriting everything. Oh my God. Are you seriously mad about the will? Grow up. It's just money. Just money. It was fascinating to me how quickly just money became the family motto the second that money was his. Then you won't mind covering the mortgage this month. I replied, silence. A few minutes later, my mother went for the emotional jugular. The way she always did when logic failed her times. Family takes care of each other. Marin, we did so much for you growing up and now you're just going to abandon us. I had to set my phone down and breathe before I responded to that one. Abandoning them. As if 6 years of financial support evaporated the moment I stopped being silent about being left out of their future. You made it clear I wasn't part of the family when you left me out of the will. I finally wrote, Desmond can take care of you now. My dad's next message was the one that really got under my skin. Times we're not asking for much. Just enough to get through until things stabilize. Don't be selfish. Selfish. After 6 years of being the family's unpaid financial planner, I was the selfish one for finally saying no once. I'm done. I texted back and turned my phone off for the night. I genuinely thought that would be the low point. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to a notification, a payment request through Venmo, sent by my mother at 6:47 a.m. The amount, $2. Babe Wusher, no note, no context. Just a cold, silent demand for exactly what they needed to cover the overdue mortgage payment. Like I was an ATM that occasionally required a polite reminder. I declined it. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing calls, texts, more calls. I let almost all of them go unanswered. When I finally responded to one, it was to my dad, who'd written times. Are you really going to let your parents lose the house? I typed back times. Maybe you should have thought about that before deciding I didn't matter. That night, Desmond tried again, this time with a wounded, put upon tone that almost impressed me with its audacity times. Dude, just send them the money. You're making this way bigger than it needs to be. You mean the money you're inheriting times, I wrote. Why don't you send it? I don't have that kind of cash right now. He replied, of course he didn't. He'd never had that kind of cash. That was rather the entire point. Guess you'll have to figure it out then. I typed, you're the one they chose. I thought that exchange, humiliating as it was for all of us, marked the bottom. It didn't. 2 days later, I was at my desk at work. I'm a project coordinator for a regional healthcare nonprofit, a detail that matters only because it means I have very little patience left over for drama by 5 p.m. when I got a call from the front desk of my apartment building. Hi, Ms. Whitfield, your parents are here. They're saying it's an emergency and that you're not answering your phone. My stomach dropped. Please don't let them up. I'm not expecting anyone. There was a pause. They're being pretty insistent. I don't care. They need to leave. I hung up. And within a minute, my phone lit up again times. We're outside your building. Open the door. Then Malmarin. We're not leaving until you talk to us. I sat at my desk for a long moment, hands flat on the surface, trying to steady myself. Then I grabbed my bag and drove home. Not because I wanted to talk to them, but because I needed to see with my own eyes just how far they were willing to go. When I pulled into the parking lot, there they were, my mom, arms crossed, wearing the exact expression of wounded dignity she'd perfected over 3 decades. My dad, jaw set, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, and Desmond hanging back near the mailboxes, looking supremely bored, like he'd been dragged along to a dentist appointment rather than an ambush of his own sister. My mom saw me first. Marin, finally, we need to talk. No, I said, staying by my car. You need to leave. Excuse me, she blinked like I'd spoken a foreign language. You don't get to show up at my apartment demanding money. I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. That's not normal. That's not okay. My dad scoffed. Are you really going to let us lose the house over a grudge? A grudge, I repeated. You mean the grudge where I found out I spent 6 years paying for a house that was never going to be mine? While my brother lived in it for free and got it handed to him anyway, that grudge. My mom's hand went to her chest. The universal gesture of maternal betrayal. We only did what we thought was best for the family. Best for the family. I said, or best for Desmond. Silence. Nobody corrected me. I finally turned to my brother, who had been staring very intently at the pavement. You've got nothing to say. He looked up, defensive immediately. I didn't ask for any of this. No. I said, you just never turned it down. Either you're 26. Desmond, get a job. If you want the house, act like someone who deserves a house. Jesus. Marin. I'm serious. I looked between the 3 of them. You decided he deserved everything. And I deserved a line about loving us equally. And now that there are actual bills to pay, you want me to keep footing them like nothing happened. That's not going to keep happening. My mother's voice sharpened into the tone she used to use when I was a teenager who'd missed curfew. We thought you'd be more mature about this. Mature. I said, meaning quiet. Meaning I find out I was cut out and I keep paying anyway and never say a word. That's not maturity. Mom, that's just being useful and quiet at the same time. My dad tried the old authority voice next. We raised you, fed you, clothed you. The least you can do is help us now. I already did. I said, for 6 years, and you repaid me by cutting me out completely. My mom's chin trembled. We thought you'd understand. I do understand. I said, I understand that I was never really considered family here. I was considered a resource. Nobody had anything to say to that. I turned, went inside, and closed the door on the whole scene. My phone buzzed once more that night. My dad writing times. After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us. I typed back times, no, this is how you treated me. I'm just finally responding to it. Then I blocked all 3 numbers. I want to tell you that was the end of it. It wasn't, blocking them didn't stop the story, it just moved the story somewhere. I could no longer control it. Within 2 days, I started seeing posts. My mom had never been especially active on Facebook, but grievance apparently is motivating. She posted something about how she didn't raise her daughter to turn her back on family, followed by a string of sympathetic comments from her book club friends about how disappointing it is when children forget where they came from. My dad followed with his own post, longer and more theatrical, about how a family gives everything and gets abandoned in their time of need, and in case anyone missed the point. He tagged me directly, but it was Desmond's post that actually made my hands shake. He wrote something about how some people think love is about money and how he'd always be there for our parents, unlike people who only care about themselves. He didn't name me. He didn't have to. Everyone who knew our family knew exactly who he meant. I sat with that for most of an evening. I didn't want to respond out of anger. I'd learned that lesson already, watching my parents try to bully me into silence. So I waited. I let myself actually think about what I wanted to say and why. The next night, I posted my own account on my own page to the people who actually knew me, not to win an argument, but because I was done letting someone else write the story of the last 6 years of my life. I wrote about the mortgage payments, about the roof, about the car I bought so my mother could get to dialysis. I wrote about finding the will by accident and about the exact words my mother used, times you don't need it, times as if not needing something makes it acceptable to be denied it entirely. I wrote about Desmond, not cruelly, but honestly, 26 years old, no job, no responsibilities, and somehow still the one deemed worthy of inheriting everything. I said, plainly, that family should be a 2-way relationship, not a 1-way withdrawal. I said I wasn't apologizing for finally choosing myself after 6 years of choosing everyone else first. I hit post and felt, for the first time in weeks, like I could breathe. The response wasn't what I expected. Old coworkers, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, even a family friend of my mother's, all reached out, some publicly, some in private messages to say they were sorry, that they'd had no idea, that they respected me for finally speaking up. It didn't erase what happened, but it did something almost as important. It took the story out of my parents' hands and put it back in mine. My dad called furious. The one time he found a way around the block using a coworker's phone. You've humiliated this family. He said, you'll regret this. I didn't argue. I just said, I don't think I will, and hung up. It's been 4 months now. I haven't sent them another dollar. I haven't paid another bill. As far as I know, Desmond is, for the first time in his adult life, contributing to a household mostly because he has to. I don't know what will happen to the house. And I've made peace with not knowing. It was never going to be mine anyway. I just didn't know that until the day I accidentally found the paperwork proving it. People ask me sometimes if I regret posting what I did, if I regret cutting them off so completely. I don't. Not because I don't love my parents, I think in their limited, complicated way. They do love me, but because loving someone and using them are not the same thing, and I spent 6 years confusing the two, I still believe in family. I still believe in showing up for the people you love. But I believe now that it has to go both ways, that being depended on isn't the same as being valued, and that you can give someone everything and still end up with nothing to show for it if you never ask what you're actually owed in return. I'm not the villain in this story, no matter how many Facebook posts say otherwise. I'm just the daughter who finally stopped paying for a seat at a table that was never set for her. If you've ever found out where you really stand with the people you thought you could count on, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. You're not alone in this, and you're allowed to choose yourself to